Okay, so I believe I just got cut off at the very end of the last video, and so I was going over the report looks like. So you have your project summary overall, and then your building summary overall. And this was again from my project that I've done because I couldn't get the report to actually show up through Revit for the tutorial that I was given. And then once it kind of gives you an overall summary of the building, it starts to break it down by zone, and then you can see all the information that's provided. And then per zone, it starts to break it down for the individual aspects, walls, windows, doors, roofs, people, power, and then it shows cooling and heating. Take note for heating, obviously there's no actual heating calculation that you need to do for Miami because with the HVAC system you don't have to provide heat. But do notice that it shows it for wall, roof, and infiltration, and that's the heat and load that's going to come through, with sun, because obviously sun is going to provide heat to spaces, and then so that's how much the space is going to be heating up, with the sun. So then it'll show you each zone that you have in your building. And then this is the last one that I have, the last page that I have, but you notice that it says page 10 of 70. So there's 70 pages total in this report, and that's because after it goes through all the zones, it does the same exact thing. So it shows the same exact information, but on space, but by a space basis. So however many spaces you have in your building, and I believe I had probably like 30 of them after I did all of this. So it'll show all of this information, the same exact way, but for a space by space breakdown. Then I'm going to go back. You'll notice that this is actually a different model than what I was trying to get to work. The reason I switched is because I tested, I tested this, and this will give me the report that I am looking for. I don't know what was going on with the other model. I think it could have been something to do with my site. Just because the site, it might have been dragging it down, so it wasn't running quickly, or it was just affecting it and it wouldn't run. At first I thought it was the Green Building Studio that was making it not run, but then I tested. I just opened a blank project and just put together this quickly to see if I could get the report to run, and it did. So I'm just going to go through this. So I'm going to go to a floor plan, and I've added a couple more spaces to this one just to kind of give you a better breakdown of the report. So you can see for here, this space, I made it as a dining area, so say a cafe. This space is kind of say rooms for a motel. This one was merchandise, so say a retail area. And then this one is a the manufacturing facility, say for where the coffee would be brewed. And then I also have one zone. Actually, I have two zones in here. This one, so zone 2 takes up both of these spaces. And then I have a zone here, I believe, or is it back here? Okay, so then the second zone is back here, which goes with just the manufacturer in itself. And then this one was not zoned, and it will go into the default zone. And that's what I want to touch on with this video that I forgot to mention when I first introduced this. Was so you can see here, so this starts to show the different zones that I have. Then you have a default zone. So if you put spaces in and you don't assign them to a specific zone, you can it will revert back to whatever the general settings are. So you can see, so all the spaces are assigned to this default zone, and you can see here how it says service type building. So that means for the building service, it's a VAV type system. Obviously from here I can change it if I wanted to for default, or I can click on the zones that I put in myself, and obviously again update them from here. If I click on the space itself, you can see here how again if I change I changed the space type, but if I left it at building, it would revert back to the general settings I have for the building. So that's why you can only click one you can only click one kind of general space for the building. That's why I always say the largest space. Pick your largest space, because if that largest space is going to be a zone, that'll be one less space. You can just have everything in that zone default to that, and then you could take care of it that way. But obviously, that's how you can kind of set up, you know, different spaces, with different space type, and then zones with a different service type. So that's how you could, with zones you can have multiple HVAC systems, and then with spaces you can have multiple space types instead of just this generic building type for the whole building. The other thing I want to show is so this is kind of like your analysis model for the heat and cooling load that's going to show up. And what's helpful for this is it'll give you a sense of the whole space. And when you first run this, you may get an error saying that everything's not lining up, and that's from when I showed you when I did this in the previous video, and I showed you the section and I showed you the space. It was going. I had to pull it past, and in that one, it actually aligned to it how it was supposed to, so it followed the path of the roof. When I did this one, it didn't, and it actually went past, as I mentioned. It used to do before, but Revit takes care of that for you. So when I went into the heat and load, and when I first clicked on this, it gave me a little error message saying that spaces do not properly, fall within the building or whatever it says. You just hit OK, and that's when it fixes it for you and aligns them to fall, within the space of the roof. But what I was trying to get to with this is, if you click on a zone and then you hit show, it'll highlight that zone for you. Or you can hit isolate, and it'll isolate just that zone for you. So you can start to get a sense to make sure that every single cubic foot of your building has been zoned, or has a zone signed to it and a space signed to it. Because obviously it's going to be more with the spaces, and then the space gets put into a zone. And then you can do the same thing for a space. You can click on a space and you can tell it to show. Let me actually click on this one, since this zone is made up of two spaces. So now I can highlight it, or I can isolate just that space. So that kind of helps you start to break down. This would be an error message. So if there's ever an error with any of these, it'll show you the error message. So I think that's pretty much it. And then for this one, so I'm going to change this as to an overall. I'm going to say it's retail, but I have all these set up. So this is building. Actually, I should make this space. So that space is dining. This space is living. For the hotel, this is retail. And then this is the manufacturing. Again, if I wanted to, I could set up my own building types if I was going to use it as the function parameter. So I can override for a specific space. So maybe you want the construction type for the manufacturing to be different than the rest of the building, so you can set that up here, and that would override what's set up here for the building in general. So you could always do that, or again you could do it identify by build elements, and it'll take all the properties for each of the element and do it that way. But I'm going to run the report first for as a function parameter. So it's going to take all of that, and I'm going to hit calculate, and now it's going to actually generate my report for me. So now it's working, and then here you start to see, it gives you a level 1. This one I hit detailed, I believe, on that one. Let me just double check. Yeah, so that one's going to be detailed, so that's why you see here, so project summary, building summary, and then it's going to actually give you a level summary. So if you do it by a detailed one, and you have 4 levels to your building, it's going to summarize each level for you. And then it starts to get into the zone summaries. So now you have a summary for that default zone, and then it shows you the spaces that were in that zone. and basically what was used to calculate that zone. It shows you the space, and then the zone 2, and then the breakdown of the walls and everything in it, the spaces that were in that zone, and then zone 3, the spaces were in that zone, and then this is where it goes into the basically what was here. It shows it for each space. So the 4 spaces that I have, and then so basically that's the type of report that you can get. And so you see that how it popped up right when I hit it, but if you scroll down, you see where basically right above where there's sheets, you have a kind of a new one that comes in that's reports, and I have loads report, and that's the report that I just did. Since I have my building set up for exterior for actual elements with thermal properties set to it, I want to switch this to identify exterior elements. I'm going to run a report for that one, and so it's going to give me a report based on the actual elements and not the parameters. Since I have actually walls that I put in and a specific type of roof, and then the glass I set, and the interior walls I had. So that's why it was able to generate it based on the exterior elements instead of using the function parameters and defining the construction this way. Again, you can do, obviously, again, as I mentioned, doing it with function parameters helps you kind of gauge the type of construction that you're gonna do for the walls and the roof and stuff like that. So you can do that at first to kind of just get a basic report, see how it's performing, and then you can modify the different elements to kind of you can start to modify these to play around with them, see what works best, and then we can start to add in all the elements, so we can build a wall that matches the wall that you deemed works pretty well, and then we can switch over to run it as an actual elements in the building itself. And then you see here it just adds, so it saves both reports for you, so you can switch back and forth and compare the two. You can print them out. You can actually, if you have a sheet, I just load one quickly. You can actually put the reports on a sheet. I believe. I forgot how I did it, or maybe not. Actually, I had to print them and then insert them as PDFs. So I think that's how I did it. You could put them on there, but that's for another time to go over that. So that's basically your report, heating and cooling load report. This is kind of like the last kind of step. The doing a report, an energy analysis report through here is kind of like a generic basic one to kind of give you initial ideas. And then this is where it starts to break down your building piece by piece, or space by space, I should say, and to tell you how each one is performing and how the walls are performing and stuff like that. And then here you can see here when you hit detailed. So the one that I was showing you in my project, I believe it was standard. So it's kind of just total for cooling and percentages. But when you hit detail, it actually starts to break it down by direction. And show walls that are on the north side of the building, and so it breaks it down. So if you're studying with sun and everything, you'll start to know how it's broken down that way. But as I was saying, so this is more detailed of analysis where it breaks it down. And you can actually see how the building's actually performing, a lot better than the general analysis in the energy settings. But I believe this is it for the analysis part. Again, you guys can go through these videos and see if you can get the stuff to work. At least get some general ideas and general reports generated for Monday, and then obviously in studio, we can look at it and further if you can't get something to work, and we can see how things are working in your buildings, in your actual teams.